Hey there, Roothaven Grounds family. Today I'm going to share something that completely transformed my gardening game, and honestly, I wish someone had told me about this years ago when I was struggling with root rot and stunted seedlings. We're talking about hydrogen peroxide, that simple bottle sitting in your medicine cabinet that's actually a secret weapon for explosive plant growth. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hydrogen peroxide, isn't that just for cleaning cuts and scrapes? Well, buckle up because this zero-microbe liquid is about to become your new best friend in the garden, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use it safely and effectively. Let me take you back to chemistry class for just a moment, but I promise to keep it simple. Hydrogen peroxide has the chemical formula H2O2, which means it's basically water, H2O, with an extra oxygen atom attached. That extra oxygen is where all the magic happens. When you apply hydrogen peroxide to your soil or directly to your plants, it breaks down into water and releases that extra oxygen molecule. This process happens naturally and relatively quickly, which is why it's completely safe for your plants when used correctly. That burst of oxygen does several incredible things simultaneously. It aerates the soil at a microscopic level, kills harmful bacteria and fungi, destroys insect eggs and larvae, and stimulates root growth like nothing else I've tried. The key here is understanding that hydrogen peroxide is completely microbe-free. Unlike compost teas or other organic amendments that introduce beneficial bacteria, hydrogen peroxide sterilizes. This might sound counterintuitive since we're always talking about building healthy soil biology, but there are specific situations where this nuclear option is exactly what your plants need. Over my years of gardening and sharing tips with you all here at Roothaven Grounds, I've identified several situations where hydrogen peroxide becomes absolutely essential. If you're dealing with root rot, this should be your first line of defense. I learned this the hard way. After losing an entire flat of tomato seedlings to damping off disease, the hydrogen peroxide would have saved them. Overwatering is probably the most common problem I see in the comments section, and hydrogen peroxide can actually help rescue waterlogged plants by introducing oxygen to suffocated roots. When you're starting seeds, a hydrogen peroxide treatment can prevent fungal diseases before they even start. I now use it on all my seed starting operations, and my germination rates have improved dramatically. Hydroponic systems benefit enormously from regular hydrogen peroxide additions because it keeps the water clean and oxygenated. If you're like me and sometimes inherit plants from friends or buy them from questionable sources, a hydrogen peroxide treatment acts as a quarantine measure, killing any pests or pathogens that might be hiding in the soil. This is where most people mess up, and I made these mistakes too when I first started experimenting. The hydrogen peroxide you buy at the drugstore is typically 3% concentration, and this is what I recommend for most home gardeners. It's safe, effective, and you can't really hurt your plants with it if you follow the guidelines I'm about to share. For general watering and maintenance, I mix 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide per cup of water. This works out to roughly 1 part hydrogen peroxide to 16 parts water. I use this dilution for routine watering of seedlings, treating plants that look a bit sluggish or as a preventative measure during humid weather when fungal problems are more likely. If you're dealing with an active infection or you know some pretty severe root rot, you can actually go a bit stronger with 1 part hydrogen peroxide to 4 parts water. I reserve this concentration for emergency situations only because while it definitely kills the bad stuff, it also kind of nukes those beneficial soil organisms we really want to keep around. After using this stronger solution, I always follow up about a week later with some compost tea to reintroduce the good guys. For seed soaking, which is honestly one of my favorite applications, I use a very weak solution, just 1 teaspoon per cup of water. I soak seeds for about 15 to 30 minutes before planting, and this really helps soften the seed coat, kills off surface pathogens, and, from what I've seen, seems to improve germination speed. Application method. Well, it matters just as much as concentration. For soil drenching, which is what you'll probably do most often, just water your plants with the diluted solution like you would with regular water. Make sure that solution reaches deep down into the root zone. I like to do this early in the morning so the soil has all day to absorb the oxygen, and any excess can evaporate. The first time you do this, you might notice a bit of fizzing or bubbling in the soil. don't panic. That's actually a good sign. It means the hydrogen peroxide is reacting with organic matter and pathogens, releasing oxygen. The more it bubbles, the more work it's doing. For foliar sprays, I use the weakest dilution and only spray the undersides of leaves, where pests and fungal spores tend to congregate. Never spray in full sun because the hydrogen peroxide can cause leaf burn when combined with intense sunlight. Early morning or evening applications work best. When treating root rot specifically, I've found success by actually removing the plant from its pot, gently washing away the diseased soil, trimming off any black or mushy roots with sterilized scissors, and then soaking the remaining healthy roots in a hydrogen peroxide solution for about 10 minutes before repotting in fresh, sterile soil. Now let's talk about why I call this the liquid that makes plants explode with growth. The mechanism is actually pretty straightforward once you understand it. Plant roots need oxygen to function properly. They're not just sitting there passively absorbing water. They're actively respiring, taking in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide just like we do when we breathe. In compacted or waterlogged soil, oxygen levels drop dramatically, roots essentially suffocate, growth stalls, and the plant becomes vulnerable to diseases. When you introduce hydrogen peroxide, you're delivering a concentrated oxygen boost directly to the root zone. This stimulates root development, and as every experienced gardener knows, healthy roots equal explosive top growth. I've seen plants that were barely hanging on completely turn around within 2 weeks of hydrogen peroxide treatment. The new growth comes in vibrant and strong, and the overall vigor of the plant transforms. It's particularly noticeable in container plants where soil compaction is more of an issue. Let me be straight with you about safety because, honestly, I care about both you and your plants. Never use hydrogen peroxide concentrations higher than 3% unless you really know what you're doing. The higher concentrations sold for industrial use or hair bleaching can seriously damage your plants and are dangerous to handle. Don't treat your plants with hydrogen peroxide more than once a week. This isn't a daily fertilizer, it's a therapeutic treatment. Overuse will sterilize your soil completely, and that's not what we want for long-term soil health. After a hydrogen peroxide treatment, give your plants at least a week before reintroducing beneficial microbes through compost or other amendments. One mistake I made early on was treating my entire garden indiscriminately. Established outdoor plants growing in the ground with healthy soil ecosystems don't need hydrogen peroxide. Save it for container plants, seedlings, hydroponic systems, or plants showing signs of disease. At Roothaven Grounds, I've developed a protocol that works beautifully for my setup, and you can adapt it to yours. For seed starting, I soak all seeds in a weak hydrogen peroxide solution before planting. When seedlings emerge, I water them once with diluted hydrogen peroxide after their first true leaves appear to prevent damping off. For container plants, especially houseplants and vegetables in pots, I do a hydrogen peroxide treatment once a month during the growing season as preventative maintenance. If I notice any signs of stress, fungal growth, or pest activity, I increase this to weekly until the problem resolves. I keep a spray bottle of diluted hydrogen peroxide ready during humid summer months to spray any plants showing early signs of powdery mildew or other fungal issues. Catching these problems early makes all the difference. Here's the thing about hydrogen peroxide in the garden. It's not a magic bullet that replaces good gardening practices, but it's an incredibly powerful tool when used appropriately. Think of it as your emergency response system and preventative medicine rolled into one affordable, accessible package. Start small. Try it on a few seedlings or a houseplant that's struggling. Watch what happens over the next couple of weeks. I think you'll be as amazed as I was the first time I saw the results. Remember, gardening is all about observation and adaptation. What works perfectly for me might need tweaking for your specific conditions, and that's okay. That's part of the joy of this whole journey we're on together. If this article helped you understand how to use hydrogen peroxide in your garden, do me a favor and subscribe to Roothaven Grounds. Share this with your gardening friends who might be struggling with root problems or disease issues. The more we share knowledge, the better we all grow. Drop a comment below telling me about your experiences with hydrogen peroxide, or let me know what you'd like me to cover next. Until then, keep growing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the garden.